pace is dropped on Soccer's morning show. It's Thursday Thoughts. Once again, the music gets you to 9:06, and it's like, by the way, greetings from Statesboro, Georgia, where we're doing today's show. A lot of the show is going to be focused on U.S. Open Cup, and we will have Darin van Tassell joining us bottom of the hour to talk about the experience last night for South Georgia Tormenta going up against RGV Toros. And a bit of a side note, the location of the studio today is the same location where the Toros are staying. And it was fun to catch up just briefly last night with Wilmer Cabrera, the head coach of RGV, who apparently took 2 flights and a bus to get from Edinburgh, Texas to Statesboro, Georgia for the match last night. Tormenta had a 2-1 lead, 2-0 lead. Then Toros scored at 90 plus. Your final score was 2-1. There was a boatload of crazy last night in the matchups in Open Cup. We'll go over that coming up in just a little bit. Like I said, this will be a lot of Open Cup today. There's also news that's going on. We'll get into that. There's some breaking news that happened, and we'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. There's your required reading for the day, and a lot's going on. So trust me, a lot's going on, and you're also having to try to wiggle a camera to where you're showing parts of a room, but not other parts of a room. So greetings from Statesboro, and thanks for hanging out with us for Thursday Thoughts. What's on your mind, as always? Morning from San Antonio, Ropes. And morning to San Antonio, I guess I should say, because I'm not in San Antonio. You are. So morning Ropes to the Central Time Zone. Morning, Coco. Morning to each and every one of you that's going to be hanging out this morning. And once again, whatever's on your mind for Thursday Thoughts, go ahead and put it in the Twitch pitch. Everything is going to be cool. Like I said, have a couple of guests anticipated outside of Darin in hour number 2. We'll get into that. But because we are a show about soccer, and, things do happen before we go on the air. We kind of, wait a minute. No, because I can't do that because it always goes back to the default setting no matter what I do. So, here we go. Welcome to Breaking News. Frank Lampard for Chelsea fans. All right, I want to hear it. Frank Lampard back for Chelsea until the end of the season. Caretaker manager position till the end of the year. Rehired their former coach. Out of work since he was fired by Everton in January. He's going to take charge while the Blues continue their search for a permanent successor. And you've got all of this going on. So wasting no time. So I mentioned Frank Lampard. I mentioned Blues, and there's a team that's got blue in their outfit. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to let the man have a sip of his caffeine. We'll go ahead and bring him in. Wasting no time, Darin van Tassell.
Good morning. Good morning.
Well, there's the voice. There's the voice.
I think that's mainly only because I haven't been speaking to anybody yet.
Oh, well, it takes a little while for the engine to get warm, is what you're saying?
That's right. I start with I'm on my second cup of South Georgia coffee. We just call that, Diet Coke in our part of the world.
Well, I'm close. I'm right there with you, brother, except I go to the other side of the aisle. That is definitely how I run. How long have you had to recover from what happened last night in Open Cup?
Well, it was a big win. I stayed up late, John. I had to watch got to watch it live, and then I watched the replay, which had I got to listen to some of my favorite commentators last night on the call. That was a good time.
I mean, I give Edwin Pintor full credit for that because I said, EP, I'm coming down. And for those that don't know, Edwin is the media relations guru director type for South Georgia Tormenta. And I said, I'm coming down. He's like, well, you want to help out with the broadcast? And I'm like, well, sure, I can help out with the broadcast. And so sure enough, he's like, yeah, okay, you're doing color. I'm doing play-by-play. And so we're just off and running, and we kind of turned it into almost like a talk show format. And the interaction from folks that were watching the match on YouTube interaction was from like all over the planet, and it was
Pretty
really
fun when
cool.
that happens. I'm with you. That's pretty fun when that occurs. Thank you for keeping Edwin settled in the booth. He gets excited. It's fun to work with people that care about the organization they're a part of.
Well, and I will give Edwin full credit for his goal calls, because he did come out of his shoes, and understandably so.
Yeah.
And
That you can tell he's that Mexican national team heritage in him shows up. He likes it.
You've made it through another round of U.S. Open Cup,
Yeah.
RGV, and I was talking about it. And RGV had 2 flights and a bus to get from Edinburgh, Texas to here. Caught up with Wilmer Cabrera after the match. He said, I'm not using that as an excuse. We just didn't get the job done last night. But, the randomness of matchups and things like that, that's the beauty of this tournament. Last night, RGV comes to town, and it took a little while for Ian and the guys to kind of get their sea legs a little bit after having played recently. But once it finally happened, and you're still a little dinged up in a couple of fronts, no Keziah Sterling, no Arthur Boswa, and you end up getting it done, winning 2-1.
Yeah, we don't have Jake Dingler either, so that makes it a challenge. But here we go. Sports are fun when you get to do it. They presented all kinds of problems for us, for sure. And listen, the last couple of games we had our own challenges scoring. All the goals were really good in the game. The highlight clearly is when you save a PK and having Pablo show up at that moment was masterful. I actually thought the rebound was in watching it live. Just missed. It's a great team that Wilmer brought. It was an honor to be on the field playing against a team that he coached. And now it's the fun part of the Open Cup season, right? The draw is tonight, 6:30. We'll see what happens. There's some fun wins. I watched our friends at Greenville, who we play this weekend. I thought they gave Phoenix Rising, a lot, and they're down a lot of people as well. Here's my sort of thought at the moment. We're pretty selfish that we like when Tormenta is winning, and we've had some success against the championship in our last 2 years. But this is a sport that's been built on a whole bunch of people that came before us, and the health of the quality of play in all divisions is really exciting to see. And we spent decades getting here. To this point, I think the Open Cup gives us a chance to stop and celebrate that.
No doubt about it. And you mentioned Pablo, and I wanted to catch up about Pablo for a second. I mean, there are some tremendous storylines involving Pablo himself about what he wants to do after the fact, and what he wants to do, and what he wants to take back home. But I mean, you're talking about a guy who's been here since day one. He's an OG. He's an OG OT. I mean, that's what Pablo is. And to have him come up big in a moment like that last night with a PK save that kept RGV off the board, and having a guy like that between the sticks. I know that having TJ Bush here and Pablo here, it's a 1 and a 1A. But you need that, especially with all the tournaments and all the matches that you want to play in a season. But to have a guy like Pablo come up with a moment like that as an OG OT, that's got to make you feel real good.
Life gets us to where we get to be surrounded by some special folks. Sometimes you get to work with them. Sometimes you work side by side with them. Sometimes they get to be players on teams that you love. I'm just lucky. I'm a fan in addition to being an owner. Pablo has a presence. And it's not just because of how he plays in games and he finds moments. Sometimes moments find him, and he succeeds. It's a great sports story to follow the guy. He's clearly the leader of our team, whether he's, quite frankly, in the field or not. We do way more things than are just on the time, but we needed him there. And even, when the fans start chanting Pablo in the crowd after that, the guy is so well loved here. One of the things I've always admired him about the most is he's very present. He lives obviously in Statesboro. He's made this his home. And life will bring lots of things with him, but boy, his time in Statesboro certainly not over anytime soon. We've built a squad around him and a whole bunch of others. But let's just cut to the chase. What a moment. We needed that. The game was 1-0, getting late. I mean, clearly the momentum was shifting a bit to them at that point. And there's a couple other big saves during the game too.
Do you remember what your first interaction with Pablo was when you first, whether it was over the phone or WhatsApp or whatever the kids did at the time and trying to have conversations? What was your first interaction with a guy like Pablo?
Yeah, I remember we were at lunch, quite frankly. We sat down just a one-on-one and learning a lot about him. His parents were getting ready to come up and visit, and a lot of us worked to make sure his folks could get here. It's a long flight from Santiago. In fact, they stayed with my family while they were here. I think the thing I was most struck by here was a person whose talent was incredibly high. By the way, this was in those amateur League Two days when you talk about the first moments. He was already, was a force multiplier is how I describe Pablo. Everybody's better when they're around him, even if it's just drinking coffee at Three Tree Coffee in downtown. But when I realized he was going to school, because he wanted to get better at English, and he was driving all the way into Charlotte from Wingate, which was about an hour each way. And for years, he just sat in on a first grade classroom just to get better, listening, absorbing, so that he could learn that part of his life. There's the guy is one of my favorite people absolutely in the world.
And to see the person that he has become and that he has blossomed into, not just on the field, but off the field, and what he has visions of what he wants to do and how he wants to impact folks and impact the game when his playing days are done, in 25 or 30 years, when he's, when he's still in between the sticks, when he's like in his 50s or something. But he man has a plan, and it's fun to hear him discuss what his plan is and how he wants to impact folks. He doesn't just want to play a sport and then leave and go home. He wants to play a sport, make an impact in the world that he's in whatever orbit he's touching.
Yeah.
And then he'll think that he's barely started to accomplish what he wants to accomplish.
How wild is it to be around someone who wants history to remember him, not for an ego's sake, but because he feels like he has a commitment to others? It's just fun to be around. It's just a great story. Everybody in this town is crazy about him. Certainly the staff that we have. But Pablo was probably up, I can almost promise you, at 5:30 today in the pool just to be recovering so that he can be ready for, what work sessions we have today, which are minimal after a game, but we've got a game again on Saturday.
What work sessions you got going today, man?
The players are just reported about 10 minutes ago. And we've got a game on Saturday. We've got stuff to do. And listen, they may not be terribly physical today, but we've got some work to do.
Okay. And you mentioned keeping an eye out on Greenville. Greenville losing 1-0 to Phoenix. So Greenville drew the short end of the straw in the magic of the cup.
Really did.
I mean, because you're going from Greenville to Wild Horse Pass, then you're having to come back, and then you've got a rivalry match coming up this weekend. And so, I mean, it's like, dude, what did we do? Who did we sit there and send the wrong text message to at Soccer House to get this one drawn up, man?
Yeah, I feel that could be us one day. Anybody could get sent off, but sent that far. But I think it was their first time they weren't able to host a match, so that put them in jeopardy of having to travel. And the East Coast bias and how many teams are on the East Coast versus the West Coast kicked in there a bit. I watched their game. What a fantastic effort that they were given. Easily could have won that particular competition. They're just pros at Greenville. It's an honor to be able to play against them. Clearly, they're our biggest rival and our biggest fans' rival. If you poll our fans, they'll absolutely answer Greenville every time on who they like to play against the most. They haven't played at our new stadium yet. Looks like we got some rain in the forecast on Saturday, so the sub-air system is going to be on here as well as the Augusta National all weekend. For that.
With
But
the weather
listen,
machine that they have for that tournament, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Any team coached by John Harkes is going to be ready. They looked good last night, and they didn't travel a big party. Had a short bench, and they got their own injuries going. But it's always an honor to play against them. It's a great rivalry. Our players feel it, our coaches feel it, the ownership and admins feel it. There's so much respect. I think that's what makes it so fun too.
All right, so I've heard a little birdie told me that with this rivalry, there's going to be some added stuff going on. Are you at liberty to discuss what is going on, possibly, probably, maybe, with the future of this rivalry?
Well, this is always a great place to break anything on your show, John. Listen, we've been pretty open about. So the part that I certainly it is not that's been made public is we've made great efforts along with the Van Tassells and the Irwins at the ownership groups on both sides, but our front office is about putting together and naming our rivalry. And so the name of that's going to be released tomorrow. I'll hold off on the name, but it's going to be a fun trophy. There's going to be a lot of fun things to do with it. The fans have voted on all of this. And heck, I won't hold off. We'll go ahead and tell it. So it's too much fun. There'll be a big release with the logo and the trophy. We'll hold off and let others see it. But it's the Peach States Derby, and while Georgia, we're the Peach State. That's our motto. We wrote it down. South Carolina is pretty excited that they produce more peaches than Georgia. So the Peach States, plural, not possessive. It's my favorite fruit, as it turns out. But we've had a lot of fun putting it together, and we appreciated our fans voting in on what it should be called. So logos and trophies are coming out. Look forward to that, tomorrow on all the various ways our two clubs promote things. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. And if we're really good at this, hopefully we'll get the governors of our two states to start weighing in on it, and all of our farmers can start talking about who produces the best peaches, and here we go.
All right. So, since you've done it, I'm going to go ahead and hit the sounder. All right. The Peach States Derby. The Peach States Derby. There you go.
That sounder's how you know it matters.
The Peach States Derby, Tormenta and Greenville Triumph. Very, very cool. Pictures and evidence to follow, but Darin van Tassell, breaking news on the show this morning. Peach States Derby with Tormenta and Greenville Triumph. You mentioned the stadium, and I know that there's still a lot of stuff there's a lot of ground being turned over and turned around. You show up and you see it for a match. There's development going on. What is the latest on the development of not just the stadium, but all the infrastructure, everything going in behind? Because there's new stuff being completed and added each and every time I show up here to Statesboro.
This is my favorite topic to talk about. We've got the public's property is in, it's opened. They're still putting a Starbucks that's next to that, and they've really done great on all their side. The additional retail that's right next to this, and listen, folks have seen the property. They don't quite have a sense of how close this is to everything. We got Chick-fil-A and a whole bunch of other restaurants there. So those are just attractive pieces. One of the things that I think that's fun for us is the legitimizers that entity like a Publix or a Chick-fil-A or a Starbucks brings to our projects, to outsiders, because even non-soccer fans can appreciate that. After Saturday, we're away for about the next 3 weeks. We don't at least have a home date, so that'll let us get the parking lot finished. We've got a lot of cement to pour and some curb and gutter. It's a little hard on South Georgia clay when we're getting rain, but it's really hard on the parking. Thankfully, this is a wonderful city we play in, and kudos to our chief of police who's letting us park up and down roads that normally don't sort of let folks do it. The spillover is all here at the clubhouse. So between the expansion of the clubhouse, the addition of residential pieces to the stadium, and the craft brewery and music venue and all our suites, we've got a lot of work to do. The horizontal piece in terms of just getting the dirt moved and electrical pieces there. We worked really hard to get the stadium, John, to the point where we could play in it and still get construction going on. That slows it down in what's an ordinary construction project. But, man, it's exciting to see it. The one thing that happens when you do come and see it on site is you can tell we're not done yet.
No. But the fact that you are to this point that you have for Open Cup, I mean, for Open Cup, you have folks showing up in the midweek. For the USL League One championship game, you had a packed house, and development wasn't to the point to where it is now. But you're seeing those stages, you're seeing that growth. And as a public service, if you park at the Publix, you will get towed now. That's why you're able to park on the road. So we'd like to thank the sheriff and the sheriff's department for letting us be able to do that, because I got reminded, don't park at the Publix. You get towed across the street these days because they got work.
Yeah, they want to stay open for business too. So we've got to be good. We've got to be good neighbors and developers on all that sense. But listen, it allows us still to run first class piece of work. We really can't get more than right around 3,000 in there. We've got a really big crowd expected for Greenville. I know that Easter rainstorm that's coming is going to hurt it a bit because temperatures are going to drop. But we'll see what happens too. The Open Cup draws tonight too. We put into host. I hope that we're lucky enough to do so, and looking forward to a big crowd for that too.
Well, and there are folks who have been commenting in the Twitch pitch, by the way, that they as Atlanta United supporters, season ticket holders, all that. You have a lot of Atlanta United fans in the Twitch pitch who are rooting for the possibility of Atlanta United playing South Georgia Tormenta in the next round of U.S. Open Cup. That's what you're staring at here.
Well, it could happen. It could happen tonight. That's the fun part. We like the results, but we also like the anticipation of what the possibilities are. So we made it the third round. Atlanta United joins in the third round. Geographically, we're close. I'm stating a lot of obvious pieces at the moment. We would like to host. There's some names going to be pulled out of envelopes today. We'll see what happens. Listen, what a moment that would be for not just our club and the state, but for pro soccer in the South. So fingers crossed that we could that something like that could happen.
So what is there going to be a viewing clatch at 6:30 at a predisposed location where Tormenta is going to be watching as a group? What are the 6:30 plans? You guys just
I think we've got to meet as a team and figure that out at lunch today. But I can't imagine there won't be. Right. We will gather and watch it together.
No doubt about it. And we will be looking forward to seeing how the draw happens at 6:30 tonight while Richmond and Cleveland are playing. So they will figure out who the winner of that one gets next time, but they'll actually be busy while everybody else is keeping an eye on what's going on at Open Cup. Darin, as always, my friend, great to catch up with you. Thanks for hopping in right out of jump with your win over RGV. And we'll be keeping an eye on stuff definitely when the matchups come out later today. You got a lot of folks in the Southeast intrigued as to what their next matchup's going to be. Thanks for hanging out with us.
I am one of those fans. And how far have we come in soccer when it's Masters Week in this part of the world? All our hotels here are full for the Masters patrons, and we're talking about pro soccer. I know we've come a long ways. Thanks for all you're doing for it.
No doubt about it. Thank you, DVT. We will catch up with you soon, and enjoy your Diet Coke.
Okay, all the best, John.
Be good. Darin van Tassell. The one of the bosses, the co-owner and president of South Georgia Tormenta. Thanks for hanging out with us. See, now Darin's got golden ticket status too. He can crash whenever he wants. And so it doesn't matter if there's a win, doesn't matter if there's anything going on. He wants to break news. He wants to drink Diet Coke. He can drop in. He's got golden ticket status because he's been with us ever since the beginning. We've been telling the story of South Georgia Tormenta from jump. And so literally Darin can sit there and knock on the door and go, all right, I got something, John, okay, I got something to talk about. And so literally DVT's got golden ticket status. He can hop in anytime he wants. And very, very cool that he came in on limited sleep to discuss everything going on in U.S. Open Cup from a Statesboro perspective. That's why we were down here last night, and like I said, it was fun to kind of catch up with everybody here in Statesboro watching the match last night, and being pulled in out of the bullpen to do color with Edwin Pintor. That was pretty fun. The game's up on YouTube, and so were all the comments, and so that was fun. All right, getting into what happened last night, and Darin got into it a little bit with what was going on with Open Cup, and I know we talked about Frank Lampard. We'll talk about that a little bit more. There's Matt Crafton had a story in The Athletic that we probably need to get into as your requested reading this morning, having to do with Newcastle. Sorry, Alex. And we'll get into that as well. Like I said, we have some other guests anticipated for Open Cup discussions, and we'll see if they can hop on. But we have a lot of Open Cup to talk about. Getting into the results from last night, and it was half past crazy at points. Going all the way, we'll start with the late matches first, and we'll build our way backward because there was some craziness that happened last night. We mentioned Phoenix and Greenville, and Darin mentioned keeping an eye on Greenville Triumph. Phoenix Rising, by the way, if you haven't noticed, they're kind of like Atlanta United 2 West. Jackson Conway, Rocco Rios Novo, Babacar Njai, and I think that's just barely scratching the surface. We were talking about it last night, but yeah, if you look at the roster for Phoenix Rising, it's like Atlanta United 2 West. So Phoenix got the Duke 1-0 over Greenville. It took a while, but Monterey Bay beat Central Valley Fuego by the score of 3-1. Vegas Lights, no problem with LA Force. They won by the score of 4-0. Speaking of former Atlanta United folks, Cubo Torres got on the score sheet last night for Vegas, and in their 4-0 win over LA Force out of Nisa. Orange County SC, no problems with Capo. Capo was a man down at one point, and Orange County put 5 on the board to win 5-0 over Capo to advance to the next round. Craziest match of the night, and I mean this in every sense of the word, craziest match of the night. And if I had told you it was going to be Sacramento Republic and Crossfire Redmond, what would you have told me? Show of hands. You're all a bunch of fibbers. Sacramento Republic down 2-0, comes back to tie it at 2. They go to extra time. They went the next 30. The match went back and forth. In the extra 30, it was 3-2. It was 4-3 the other way. It was 4-4. Sacramento Republic came back to win it 5-4. So you had 7 goals scored. Well, actually, no, wait. If it was 2-2, so 2-2, 4-4. Yeah, 4, 4, and 9. So 5 goals. You had 5 goals scored. You had 4 goals scored in the first 90 minutes. You had 5 goals scored in the next 30. Craziest match of the night. Crossfire Redmond acquitted themselves very, very well and had accounted for themselves very, very well in the 5-4 shootout, and I mean that at Hard Health. It was an absolute 9-goal thriller. Sacramento Republic wins that one 5-4, and you had to stay up late to keep an eye on that one, like till 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning East Coast time. San Diego Loyal beats Albion 2-0. Took a while, but Northern Colorado, the hailstorm came back to, I think Colorado Springs had a 1-0 lead. And then you had Northern Colorado come storming all the way back. In the extra 30, they came back to win 3-1. Same thing happened with Indy 11 and Michigan Stars. That one was tied at 1. They went the extra 30. Indy 11 won 3-1 there. That game was postponed an hour because they wanted to let the weather go through at the Mike in Indianapolis before they started that one. Chattanooga FC traveled to Des Moines, and this is hopefully one of the places where we can get to talk to folks this morning. And Chattanooga FC wins by the score of 4-1 over Des Moines Menace. If you didn't get to see it, probably one of the more one of the more friendly environments and one of the more fun environments that was part of the magic of the Open Cup. And I know, Ricky, you've been talking about the magic of the Open Cup this morning in the Twitch pitch. Hicks Park, Tulsa, Oklahoma. FC Tulsa Athletic. And I'm serious. Go to U.S. Soccer and find the match. You go to the U.S. Soccer website. They've got the grid for the schedule. Click on the click on the team cast, look at Hicks Park. The near side looked like it had no grass whatsoever. It literally looked like it was in a park. I don't know how much actual seating existed. You had like a bouncy house in an end zone. You had a tree near the bouncy house where you probably could climb the tree, go up to like the third or fourth level, and parachute into the bouncy house from the tree. Fantastic visuals last night with FC Tulsa and Tulsa Athletic. And Tulsa Athletic, the NPSL franchise, advanced 1-0. Murder Owls Union Omaha shut out El Paso Locomotive by the score of 2-0. Birmingham Legion, who were a man down at one point, who had to play with 10, knocked off Chattanooga Red Wolves at CHI Memorial in Eastridge last night by the score of 4-1. Lou City scored with about 20 minutes to go to knock off Lexington, and the final score there was 1-0. We mentioned Tormenta and RGV, and that was a 2-1 final. Charlotte Independence shuts out Appalachian FC by the score of 2-0. That one was at Matthews. Loudoun and North Carolina FC took a while. Final score there was 2-1 Loudoun. That was at Segra. Maryland and Ocean City, that one took a while. That one went the extra 30. Maryland got the win. Both teams down to 10 by the time it was done. Maryland gets the win by the score of 3-2. We mentioned Pittsburgh as well. And Pittsburgh Riverhounds advancing because Rochester, New York FC ceased to exist. So those were your 17 matches on the night. And this was what it was supposed to be 18, but you had 17. 5 televised by BR, 5 televised locally, 7 were not. We talked about it yesterday. Thank you, Bam. Thank you. Thank you for your doing a public service. Bam, doing fantastic work this morning. And that is your link to the Tulsa match. Just look at the environment from that Tulsa match last night. Tulsa Athletic gets the win by the score of 1-0. Fantastic stuff. Well, and Ricky, now that we are through into this round, we were trying to process the information last night, and you had 11 teams from the Southeast that were active and that will be active in the next round. So here's how we were processing all of this. Let me see if I can get the list right. And you have, let me see, as I'm sitting here and I'm scanning through all of our information that we were going through last night. All right, so here's your third round and here's your Southeast. MLS teams entering in the third round, and this is in the South. I'm going to go ahead and put that in air quotes, in the South. Atlanta, Charlotte, Nashville, Miami. And so get out your legal pads, and we can map this out as we go here. So Atlanta, Charlotte, Nashville, Miami. That's going in. We know that they're going into the pile. Second round winners. Tampa Bay, Memphis 901, the Miami FC, Birmingham, Chattanooga FC. Yeah, Coco, you're going to need a legal pad. Charlotte and Tormenta. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 11. 11 teams that are going in, that are from the South in this round. Someone is going to be left out. It would not surprise me if you had, say, Charlotte being paired with the Maryland Bobcats, say, something like that. So you have 11 teams in the South. Yeah, Orlando's coming in next round, I believe. But yeah, entering in this round, Atlanta, Charlotte, Nashville, Miami, because Orlando made the postseason. The teams that did not make the postseason or didn't make deep runs in the postseason. I forget how it's worded, but Orlando comes in the 4th round. 3rd round entrants: Atlanta, Charlotte, Nashville, Miami. 2nd round winners: Rowdies, Memphis 901, the Miami FC, Birmingham Legion, Chattanooga FC, Charlotte Independence, Tormenta. So, what you're staring at, do you pair up USL Championship teams? You probably are going to have to. Then which ones do you pair up? And then who do you spread out the other way? You know, how do you register what's going on here? 3 Florida clubs, 2 Carolina clubs, 2 Georgia clubs, 1 Alabama, and 3 Tennessee. 5, 7, 8, 11. So that's the 11 that we're talking about here. Someone on the edge is going to get moved over. So my guess is it might be Charlotte to play Maryland or something like that. Like I said, we can map this out. 6:30 tonight is the draw. While Richmond and Cleveland are playing, that's your 12th team. Alabama goes. They've got to transfer more than one state. And so that's what you're looking at. Do you pair Atlanta up with South Georgia Tormenta? Do you pair Atlanta up with Chattanooga FC and have basically the rematch of what happened in the preseason? Do you pair that one up? I mean, Atlanta is in an interesting geographic location here. You could send them one of two ways. Do you pair Charleston, say, with Tormenta and have that rivalry continue? So Charleston won. Do you pair Charleston up with Tormenta? Do you pair Charleston up with the Miami FC? How do you play it? Okay, so Ricky is thankfully doing math this morning. Ricky thinks there's a group of 6 out of that and a group of 4, then an outlier. Outlier going to be Charlotte based on where they're located, unless Charlotte's paired with Charleston. Because Charleston, remember, beat Savannah Clovers. I know, Emilio. Yeah, I know. Like I said, I'd love for it to be, I would love for it to be, for the sake of variety. I know a lot of folks, and I know a lot of you this morning were chiming in about it, wanting it to be Tormenta. Tormenta, they put in the right to host. So you've got from Open Cup. So let's go back a day. Charleston could be your 12th team here in the South. And so Charleston is 12. All right. So Charleston gives you 12. So you're staring at Charleston going one of 2 directions. Does Charleston get Charlotte? That's happened before. Do you try, if you are the schedule makers, to try and make sure that you don't pair up USL Championship teams that might play each other fairly regularly? So if you're looking at it, there are 6 here. You got 6 matchups with Southern teams. But who do you pair up? Because you have 4 Major League Soccer teams. You have 1 from NISA, and you have 1 from USL League One. So if you take the 4, all right. So now I got my legal pad out. So you've got Tormenta, you've got Chattanooga FC, and you have the 4 MLS teams: Atlanta, Charlotte, Nashville, and Miami. Do you make it easy on yourself and pair up Inter Miami and the Miami FC so you can have butts in seats? My guess is I don't know if the Miami FC put in to host. But do you go Miami, Inter Miami? Just as a thought. So the Miami FC. Do you go Nashville, Memphis 901? Do you go Tormenta Charleston? Do you go Atlanta Chattanooga? I'm trying to figure out where. Sorry. So, all right. So Toronto's. See, now I'm getting myself. Yeah, and that. Bam. This is the question. This is how do you pair this up? Do you go Charlotte FC, Charlotte Independence? Do you go Atlanta Birmingham? Do you go Atlanta Chattanooga FC? I mean, Atlanta seems to be the spoke in the wheel here. You could go Atlanta Birmingham. I don't know if Legion have put into host. And then who gets Tampa? Who gets and like I said, this is what makes it interesting here. You could really create some fun city rivalries because we've seen already in this tournament and in this round that we've got folks who have been paired up with one another in their own cities. Albion and Loyal as an example. You get that in Tulsa and Athletic and FC Tulsa. We saw that one last night. Albion and Loyal. We've seen that one last night. So do you do the easy thing, which in a way makes it just as competitive? Miami v. Miami, Nashville, Memphis 901, and make them all interstate stuff. Charlotte FC, Charlotte Independence. Then do you do Tormenta Charleston? And then that leaves you with Atlanta, Chattanooga, Tampa Bay, Birmingham. And if you had Tampa Bay and Birmingham, those folks have proven that, they're no fans of each other. But do you go, do you go Chattanooga FC, Atlanta, and Tampa Bay, Birmingham? Do you do something like that? Richmond would be Team 13. I think that Richmond probably gets the winner of Richmond, Cleveland. Yeah, it's because we added. Yeah, I forgot Charleston. So you've got 6 matchups with Southern teams. The winner of Richmond and Cleveland tonight probably gets Maryland. See, now, if Richmond beats Cleveland SC, which they should, it's at City Stadium. Cleveland SC is an NPSL team. Then does Richmond get Maryland? Richmond and the Maryland Bobcats. So you're keeping you're keeping everything fairly tight when it comes to your geography. You've got 6 matchups involving Southern teams. You're fairly self-contained. What direction do you want to go? Oh, no, I'm not disrespecting the magic of the Cup at all, Bam. I'm a fan of the magic of the Open Cup. Considering what happened last night with Crossfire Redmond and Sacramento Republic, that to me, that's the magic of the Cup. And then you have Pablo O'Hara making saves. Let's see, where am I? That way. About 5 minutes that way. And if you get all the stoplights, literally it is 5 minutes that way. Tormenta Stadium. So this will be interesting. Okay, so it's now Ricky has changed his geography now. Ricky has changed his geography. Oh, I know. I know. Saying that Cleveland should lose because they're an NPSL team. And there are questions. And if one of the guests that we are efforting, actually both guests that we are efforting this morning in hour number 2 can talk about what it's like when your league is not in session and trying to get things squared away where you can have a matchup, these kinds of things. So 3 groups of 4 Tennessee teams. So Tennessee teams, Ricky is redoing his math. Changes it for you. 3 groups of 4 Tennessee teams in Birmingham, 3 Florida clubs in Tormenta, Atlanta, and the 3 Carolina clubs. And welcome, Alex. Welcome, Alex. So glad to have you here. You should win, but yes, it's the Cup. I know. And like I said, all you have to do with Magic of the Cup is look at Crossfire Redmond and Sacramento. 9 goals, 5 of them happening in the extra 30 minutes. 2-2 after 90, 5-4 after 120. So, yes. My Cleveland slander is consistent. When did I slander, David, when did I slander Cleveland the last time? Now you got me thinking about when did I slander Cleveland the last time? All right, so you made it to the CFC match. Fun venue, great supporters, and yes, and glad you made it up there to see what's going on with CFC in Findlay. It's what they're doing with that development in that space. Very, very cool. But yeah, so we got 12 in the South. How do you want to budget it? That's the question, and we'll have our answers at 6:30. And I still think that the winner of RVA and Cleveland gets paired with Maryland Bobcats. Appropriately. Okay. Well, no. Well, David, full disclosure, one of my best friends is from Cleveland. Went to Youngstown State, big Browns fan. It might have been slander toward specific players, not necessarily toward teams, and probably one position group in particular with the Cleveland Browns. No, I was a fan of. I didn't slander the Cleveland Force from the MISL. As a matter of fact, I have a Cleveland Force T-shirt, and I think I've got a Cleveland Crunch T-shirt too. As a matter of fact, but yeah, that's the beauty of where we are right now with Open Cup is trying to configure who can go where, and the possibilities of what could go down when it comes to Open Cup. Once again, draw tonight at 6:30 while Richmond and Cleveland are playing. And so we'll see what happens there with that group. Yeah, it is. Cleveland Crunch, indoor team. Let me look it up real quick. I'm trying to think of the and the whole Cleveland Force thing. They tried to do it with they tried not to get in trouble with Lucasfilm and do it that way. Cleveland Barons. Oh, absolutely. Cleveland Barons after the California Golden Seals played out at Richfield Coliseum. The Cleveland Crunch actually still do exist. It is a different logo now. And they were founded in 1989. It was an expansion team in the MISL, played 16 seasons, 3 separate leagues, 2 different names, 3 seasons in the MISL. Then joined the NPSL in 1992, the indoor version. 9 years in the NPSL, then the second incarnation of the Major Indoor Soccer League in 2001. 4 seasons they folded in 2005. They returned to M2 in 2021. So the Cleveland Crunch indoor team, 3 different incarnations. It is streamed on YouTube. As a matter of fact, the MISL is streamed on YouTube, and it's pretty wild. I was one of those guys that watched the MISL when it was on USA Network. Once again, that shows you how I am of a certain age. When you get to see guys like Stan Stamenkovic, Stevie Jungle, that was how it was for me. Oh, wow. Brian Schmetzer's twin brother played for the Force. Did not know that. But, you went to the 81 title game, David. Very, very cool. But yeah, you see where we go here. We'll go down a rabbit hole, and that's the beauty of Thursday Thoughts. See, we barely got into talking about Frank Lampard. Then Darin van Tassell joined us. Then we go down the Open Cup rabbit hole, and now we're talking about Major Indoor Soccer League, as we absolutely should. Frank Lampard had his press conference this morning, by the way, and I feel like since we're discussing news that broke, we didn't really get the chance to get into the news in and of itself as it broke. We barely got to talk about it. And then Darin van Tassell came in and talked about Tormenta. Okay, so Frank Lampard had his press conference. And you know that this is a chance for him to make his play for a long-term gig someplace. And so, Lampard came in, and I'm fairly certain that you got all the right quotes from everybody. Newly appointed Chelsea caretaker manager Frank Lampard says that midfield and Mount still has a huge role to play for the club. Everyone in the squad will have a clean slate, quoting Lampard. Mason has always been a fantastic player for me at Derby and Chelsea. I know he's had a few slight injury problems. I need to speak to him and find out where he's at, but I know what I get from Mason. He's a huge player for Chelsea. Modern-day football has big squads, and I understand Chelsea might be at the top end. That's underselling it, I think. I remember being here before and having that. Maybe in the short term, it's a positive thing for me because everyone can have a clean slate. Lampard says it's his club. The decision was a no-brainer. Ready to give his all to leave a positive impact on the club. Looking forward to working with all of the talent with the Blues. Got really fond memories under caretaker managers. Saw how Robbie affected the group. Gus had a great personal touch, great football brain. I'd be stupid not to rely on things I felt were good. I didn't think I'd never, for a double negative, I didn't think I'd never be in this seat. I'm a confident person. I work hard to understand the game. It wasn't my thought I'd one day be back as Chelsea manager. In terms of unfinished business, I don't see it like that. I look back on it with really good feelings. I'm in here in a different era and want to do as well as I can. Talking about Madrid. It's a big challenge, but aren't they all? I'm ready to put my work into this challenge and take it day by day. I have a clear idea of what I want to do. The biggest thing is to speak to the players and see them on the training ground. When he got the call, he says, of course it was a surprise. I'd be enjoying my time at home. When I spoke to Paul and Lawrence in the last 24 to 48 hours, they put forward what this is now. It was a decision I came to. I was there on Tuesday night, which was the first time since I left the club, and it was an amazing buzz to be back. My seat will be slightly different. Talking about targets and his own ideas and things like that. Credit to Bruno, who took the team, and Graham Potter, who I don't know that well, but he's a good man. I have my own ideas. Everyone can have a clean slate. Won't be my decision. He referenced Roberto Di Matteo doing such an incredible job staying on. But once again, Di Matteo had, a year and a half before they got mad at him then too. Simple terms, it won't be my decision as such, focusing on the job at hand. So Frank Lampard having his first press conference as caretaker manager. Todd Bowley and Badad Iqbali on Lampard's return. Delighted to welcome Frank back to Stamford Bridge. Frank's a Premier League Hall of Famer and a legend at this club as we continue our thorough and exhaustive process for a permanent head coach. We want to provide the club and our fans with a clear and stable plan for the remainder of the season. We want to give ourselves every chance of success, and Frank has all the characteristics and qualities we need to drive us to the finish line. We have an important game against Wolves on Saturday. Then we'll turn our attention to our Champions League quarterfinal in Madrid next week. We are all going to give Frank our full backing as we aim to get the best possible outcome from our remaining games. So that is your early comments from Frank Lampard and his press conference. David, I have a bunch of soccer cards from the MISL too. I've got to find them. I know they exist, but that was one of the things. Pacific, I think, were the ones who had the cards, and I bought like boxes from Pacific. I mean, the thing about Pacific though was that Pacific would only give you like 8 or 10 cards in a pack. And the box was really skinny. The box might have been maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches tall. And the box itself, you might have had 36 packs, but you didn't get a whole lot of cards per pack. And so it was like 8 to 10. And so hopefully you got the set that you were looking for, but the whole idea of, getting it, because, when you buy baseball cards, you're looking at baseball cards and you're going, okay, great. You get like 15 per pack and you buy the box of 36, costs you, $9 or $10 tops, TOPPS. And you spend the entire afternoon on Saturday watching Saturday baseball with Joe and with Tony and Joe. And you're unboxing, you're unwrapping all the cards and everything. Couldn't have that. It would take you like maybe half the time to do that with the MISL cards from Pacific, because you only got like 8 cards in a pack, 8 to 10 cards in a pack. And it was really easy to open them and try to figure out if you got the whole set. So, yeah. So that's what, that was the difference in the MISL packs that you'd get from Pacific and the other packs that you'd get from Topps during baseball or basketball season or something like that, or even hockey season. You'd always end up with, if you bought Topps cards, TOPPS, you'd get 15 in a pack, and you'd spend the entire afternoon. Literally, a box would cost you like $10. You sit there, you go home, you're watching stuff on TV, you're opening the cards, and that's how I remembered batting averages and ERAs. But yeah, the thing about MISL and Pacific, it was only like 10 cards a pack, 8 to 10 cards a pack. Yep, I know. Emilio, you and I, before the Great Schism of 1980, it was Topps. And those are really the only ones that I like to buy when I go backward now. is I just want to buy Topps pre-1980, pre the schism when they declared open market, and it used to be just Topps. Then it was Topps, Fleer, Donruss, Upper Deck. Then it got entirely too confusing for all of us. I just wanted my Topps. No, you and me both, ma'am. I wish they were too. But you'd end up with, for me, right now, and I'm working backward. I admit I'm working backward, and it's like 5 or 6 commons at a time. There's one particular auction house that is selling this one particular guy's collection, and there's a lot of old cards. And so anything pre-1974 is where I am right now. And so whether it's football or baseball or basketball, when they have auctions for 1974 and pre, that's where I go. But yeah, so you got that. And yeah, so the MISL cards from Pacific, I think it was Pacific, but yeah, you'd have to buy like 2 boxes to get the same kind of worth that you could in opening things up from you did with baseball cards. Top of the hour, by the way. And that means one thing. That means that we pull the music to, what do we say, 13? Well, let's go 14 just because I'm on the road. And go rock, and time to cut a promo. Brought to us by our friends at Eliminate Service. Sign is not over my left because it is in the office back home. And because it takes up too much space. But imagine, if you will, a sign talking about Eliminate Service over my left shoulder. Eliminize.com. For odor-free, clean, fresh air, one place you need to go. It's Eliminate Service. They work with realtors and property managers to make sure that the transitions are there. It's a turnkey process that makes it easy to work with said realtors and property managers. Once again, if you're looking for odor-free, clean, fresh air, one place you need to go. It's Eliminate Service. Different than Febreze or any masking agent that you have either underneath the sink or above you in the cupboard, because when you reach under the sink or above you in the cupboard, you take out that masking agent. You spray the masking agent in the air. There's a reason they call it a masking agent, because the masking agent just masks the odor. It doesn't attack the problem all the way down to the molecule, like our friends at Eliminate Service do with their proven scientific formula. Prices, one of 2 ways to make it affordable for you, either by the cubic foot or parts per million, to come up with a price that works for you to attack your issues. Now, this is where we ask you to do a favor when it comes to our friends at Eliminize. Go to the website, eliminize.com. But after the .com, and this is where I pick up my pen, go /Atlanta so they know what part of the world that you are asking them to help you with your problems. So it's ELIMINIZE.com /Atlanta, eliminize.com /Atlanta for odor-free, clean, fresh air. Eliminate Service, proud sponsors of everything SDH for your Thursday thoughts. Since I'm working with only the laptop here in the office, or in the hotel in Statesboro, I'd like to see what everybody else is talking about. And so it's like I'm bouncing back and forth with, wow. All right. So, bam, if your last box cost you 500 Australian dollar triple threads, see, that's the thing. Yes, David, yes, back when cards were a kid's toy versus an art collectible. And I still, to this day, would not put baseball cards in the spokes of wheels of bicycles because I didn't want to damage them. Although there were other kids in my neighborhood that we would trade cards back and forth in the early days. And it would be like, if there was one card that I wanted or that he wanted, we'd do like these 1 for 30 or 1 for 40 deals. I mean, seriously. I mean, like if I wanted a 1975 Cliff Branch, I'd have to give up like 30 commons for it. I thought it was a great deal. Yeah, and that was, I remember that game too, where you'd sit there and you kind of flip and you look at statistics, win or lose cards. I think you look at stats, Emilio, I think, and that was what we did. And if whoever had the bigger stat, or whoever had the larger card number, like we didn't have the checklists with us. So we would sit there and go, okay, we don't have a checklist, but what we'll do is we'll sit there and we'll look at the card number, and whoever had the higher card number kept both cards, and then you would take both of the cards and put them out of rotation, because if you could remember the card number, then you'd sit there and it's like, okay, so the guy who lost the recent card, he had card number 175 in the list, and so then you're trying to look for a high number, and you're sitting there and you're going bang, and you're trying to come up with a higher one. Yeah, darker. Oh, okay. So you guys did colors, and the darker shade took it. Okay, that's an interesting way to go about it. So we had that. A lot of other stuff going on this morning, and the other big story. This is requested reading for the day, and it has to do. Sorry, Alex, with Newcastle. Adam Crafton very early this morning, and it would have been released. Oh, goodness gracious. Badger, how many Manny Sanguian or Mike Lums did I give up in those 1 for 30s? A lot. You're looking at Manny Sanguian, Ken Clay, Mike Lum, Biff Pocoroba, Craig McMurtry, those kinds of cards. Oh, absolutely, in the 1 for 30s and 1 for 40s. Absolutely, you'd give up all of those. Pat McEnany, even though he was all the Cincinnati Reds, exactly, Badger. That's the thing. You're looking for that. I literally would be like 7 cards away from completing. No lie. This is the 1976 set for Topps, and I was like 7 cards away from getting the full set, and I kept getting Ken Clay. I could not get another. I mean, I literally had like 15 Ken Clays at one point. And I was 7 cards away from getting the full set in 76. And I kept getting Ken Clay each and every single time that I would buy. I mean, literally, and I would go into the drugstore and I would go to the bottom of the box. I literally would, instead of take the packs off the top, I literally would go down into the stacks in the box to try to see if I would get something other than Ken Clay. And that didn't even work. Von Hayes, Pete Vukovich, Mel Hall. Exactly, David. All right, so requested reading for the morning comes to us from The Athletic. Now, Roy White was a good player, no doubt. Dwayne Kuiper for your Cleveland Indians, absolutely. It has to do with Newcastle. Sorry, Alex. When Adam Crafton comes out with a story at The Athletic, something's in trouble. And it is a big article, and so I'll go through a little bit of it. I won't go through the whole thing because it would take forever, but that's why I've turned it into requested reading for the day. The British, and this is first couple of paragraphs, and then it goes deeper and deeper into the story in and of itself involving Newcastle. The British government considered the possible failure of the Saudi takeover of Newcastle United to be an immediate risk to the UK's relationship with the Gulf nation. Then Prime Minister Boris Johnson's chief strategic advisor even sought to find a, quote, senior interlocutor to impress the interests of the government onto the Premier League. 59 pages of emails between government officials obtained by The Athletic also appear to show the British Foreign Office pushing to help burnish the image of Saudi Arabia, a country accused of a litany of human rights abuses. Once again, this is Adam Crafton's words as he wrote the story this morning. A British foreign official flagged up a BBC interview granted by legal representatives of the grieving fiancé of murdered journalist Jamal Khashoggi in April 2020 when she pleaded with the Premier League to block the Newcastle takeover. The documents say that the Department of International Trade, or the DIT, intended to distribute a public relations offer, presumably to assist the takeover process. In another revelation, once again, this is Crafton. 2 years before the takeover bid first came to a head in 2020, the British government secured a strategic partnership with Saudi Arabia, confirmed in a meeting between then Prime Minister Theresa May and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, known as MBS, at number 10 Downing Street. The papers released by the Foreign Office claim this included a stated aim from the eventual Newcastle owners, the Saudi Public Investment Fund, or the PIF as we call it, quote, to target direct investments amounting to $30 billion, 24 billion pounds at today's conversion rate, over a 10-year period into the United Kingdom, end quote. This is significant, once again, Crafton. This is significant because it has previously been reported that MBS The PIF's chairman sent private phone messages to Johnson in which he warned there may be economic consequences for Britain if the Premier League resisted the takeover, and this spells out the masses of money potentially on the line for the UK economy. The emails detail the frequent exchanges between government ministers and civil servants working at the Prime Minister's office, number 10 Downing Street, the Foreign Office, the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, DCMS, and other branches of the government, as well as the Office of the British Ambassador to Saudi Arabia, and provide a 3-month snapshot of the importance of this deal to the UK's economy. Premier League Chief Exec Richard Masters has previously claimed there was, quote, no pressure applied, end quote, by the government during the process that culminated in the PIF acquiring 80% of Newcastle United in October of 2021, with Amanda Staveley's PCP Capital Partners and the Reuben brothers sharing the remaining 20% equally. The Premier League approved the takeover after receiving what it described as, quote, legally binding assurances. The Saudi state would not control the club, but the contents of these assurances have never been disclosed or explained. Once again, that's Crafton's words. The British government has always denied attempting to influence the takeover or having a role in it. On April 21st, 2021, opposition MP Chai Onwara asked how many discussions Johnson had held on the takeover of Newcastle, as well as the number of officials involved. Johnson told Parliament, quote, these are commercial matters for the parties concerned. The government was not involved at any point in the takeover talks on the sale of Newcastle United, end quote. When asked about his statement in the context of what we now know, a spokesperson for Johnson said it would be a question for the government rather than the then Prime Minister himself. The government declined to comment on behalf of Boris Johnson. The communications between May 1st and July 30 in 2020, obtained after a Freedom of Information request 15 months ago and combined with the Athletics' own sourcing, once again from Crafton, form a fascinating insight into how invested many power brokers at the heart of the British government appeared to be in the Newcastle takeover. Their importance is reflected in the Athletics' battle for the information to be published, with the Foreign Office first blaming cost for the delays and then investigating whether their release was in the public interest or could damage Britain's, quote, international relations with Saudi Arabia. By the time the emails finally dropped, Britain had changed its prime minister twice, from Johnson to Liz Truss to current PM Rishi Sunak. Once again, Crafton, large swaths of the email's contents have been redacted, with the government's information rights unit saying this is because, quote, the disclosure of information detailing our relationship with the Saudi government could potentially damage the bilateral relationship between the UK and Saudi Arabia, end quote. It also stated some details were withheld to protect commercial interests, in quotation marks. The investigation from The Athletic. A June 2020 email from a Foreign Office official included a draft note that Sir Edward Lister, the chief strategic advisor for Boris Johnson, was considering who should be the senior interlocutor to impress the interests of the government as the Premier League finalized its consideration of the takeover. Lord Jerry Grimstone, then a minister for the DIT, appears to have been chosen as that interlocutor. People familiar with the discussion were left with the strong impression that the government and number 10, the Prime Minister's office, were in favor of the takeover during a flurry of calls that at one stage took place every few days. Grimstone denies seeking to influence the decision. Neil Crompton, the British ambassador to Saudi Arabia, met with PIF officials to discuss the takeover. Foreign Office Minister James Cleverly, who's now Foreign Secretary and a member of the cabinet, had a call with the Saudi ambassador to the UK in which he requested an update on the bid. The Foreign Office prepared a briefing note for Johnson before his scheduled call with MBS as to how the Prime Minister should respond if the Saudi Crown Prince pressed him on the issue. The DIT is described as having made a PR offer, in quotation marks, that was to be shared with the Premier League, presumably to improve the image of Saudi Arabia and assist the takeover. And a Foreign Office official says, quote, there is space to add color to the real reforms on the ground, in quotation marks, on the Gulf state. And the Premier League board was also lobbied by clubs within its ranks, as high as at the ownership level, who feared the sporting threat Newcastle would present if acquired by the PIF. And we've long maintained, as a sidebar here on the show, that Jason has said that Newcastle was the sleeping giant in the Premier League. that and this is aside from who the owners currently are, but considering the fan base, considering the place that Newcastle has in the league, that Newcastle could be that team from outside the top 6 or the grade 8 a couple of years ago that could be the team that could make the charge up the table. And we are seeing that, but it is also with the assistance of the PIF and their purchase, along with Amanda Stavely and the Rubin brothers, getting it out of the hands of Mike Ashley first and foremost. Back to Crafton. Meanwhile, it remains unclear if Newcastle's ownership situation may come under fresh scrutiny, as the Premier League refuses to say whether it is investigating after a court case in the U.S. renewed questions about the separation between the Saudi state and the PIF. Remember the LIV case? That's currently going on right now. Lawyers representing the PIF claim sovereign immunity in a court case involving LIV, saying that the PIF and Newcastle chairman Yasser Al Rumayyan are a sovereign instrumentality of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and a sitting minister of the government. And Crafton says it's hard to see how this doesn't contradict assurances the Premier League received that the Saudi state does not control Newcastle. Owners of Newcastle may face a further headache, as The Athletic also reveals that beIN Sports, the Qatari broadcaster, considering reopening a multi-billion-pound arbitration case against the Saudi state in London, potentially reigniting the fuse of the piracy battle that posed the biggest threat to the Newcastle takeover originally. That's your requested reading for the day. That's the first part of it. So, and there's a lot more in that article, but the biggest thing was letting you know that it's out there. And so your requested reading for today is the Adam Crafton piece over at The Athletic. And, it is stories like that for me, and the quality investigative stuff that they do. The coverage of the international game for me is fantastic. That's why I'll pay the $2 a month for The Athletic. That's full disclosure. So you've got that as your requested reading for the day. And there's a lot of other news going on. And like I said, Thursday thoughts, whatever's on your mind. David Moyes, once again, we mentioned the Premier League. And here's how it's phrased. We can get into we'll get into the table here in just a second, and the 8 teams down at the bottom in Group 3, as we refer to it. Here's the title. Here's the headline of this article: David Moyes, under pressure, West Ham boss in charged for must not lose Fulham game on Saturday. Okay, so is it cool to tie? Is it cool to tie in this match? You must not lose it. But the thing is it's not just win or lose. It's win, lose, draw. Is it cool if he draws the match with Fulham, considering that, and we talked about it yesterday, the 8-match ban for Alexander Mitrovic, which is apparently not enough in the eyes of the FA. And Marco Silva's match ban, it's not enough in the eyes of the FA. They're appealing. So as of right now, Mitrovic is banned until May the 13th in a match against Southampton. But here's how it must not lose. Under pressure, West Ham boss in charge for must not lose after losing 5-1 to Newcastle on Wednesday. I think he's done at the end of the year anyway. Beaten 5-1 by Newcastle. Loss leaves West Ham outside the Premier League drop zone only on goal difference, with a game in hand on the relegation rivals. Kavi Solakal was there, and business as usual Thursday. Moyes due to speak to the media Friday morning ahead of the 10 o'clock kick. So for those of you that, like me, that like to dig into the relegation battles, then it is Saturday, 3 o'clock in England, 10 o'clock in the morning. So watch it however you wish to access West Ham and Fulham. Despite spending £179 million in the summer, West Ham have endured a miserable campaign domestically, 15 league defeats, just winning 3 of their last 16. One of 4 teams on 27 points, Everton, Forest, and 18th place Bournemouth. West Ham still, through all of this, they are preparing for a Europa Conference League quarterfinal against Ghent this month. So they still have a chance of lifting a first major trophy in 43 years. Europa Conference League, they're in the quarters. After the 5-1 defeat to Newcastle, whether he felt the West Ham board may consider making a managerial change with 10 games to go, Moyes said, quote, "I've got no doubt they're behind me. I'm confident in the way we work and what they think. They might be behind you, but they might also be pushing you off the cliff." Speaking to reporters, Moyes added, as manager, I have to take responsibility and front up to questions. You've watched the game and are able to write what you see. I'm a big boy and have left other jobs in the past. If this happens, I'd have to go with that. I really like my job here, like the people I work for, and have enjoyed my time greatly. Hoping there are a couple of big days ahead in the not too distant future. So, must not lose is how that was phrased. Must not lose. Getting to our requested reading. David this morning. I think we consistently said rich owners buy a league as a whole or buoy a league as a whole. May make the less rich owners angry because it's then harder for them to compete, but should increase eyeballs or total money. Relegation has never been more intriguing. And you're absolutely correct, David. We'll get into the table in just a second. And for the Euro snobs, look how great all of these 9 teams players are. The growth they show, knowing the only way to grow is training in fear of relegation. Yes, bam. Happy with LAFC getting a point against Austin this weekend, considering that you played last night in CONCACAF Champions League. Took you about 60 minutes, but you finally figured it out against Vancouver. And that was, it took a while, but you figured out leg one. Yes, sarcasm, absolutely. Yes, sarcasm font. Well, I mean, and so David, let's get into the current relegation fight. So just so we can recap things, because tomorrow, obviously, we're going to be wall to wall Major League Soccer. 9 o'clock will be normal news of the day. 9:30, our friends from Beyond Goals. I think it's Greg Garza's turn. And then 10 o'clock, weekend whip around, patent pending, trademark coming, hopefully sooner rather than later, possibly, maybe, perhaps. And then that's when we go through all of Major League Soccer. And by the way, if you have not joined the Fantasy League, join the Fantasy League. Join the Fantasy League. Jason Wright Agency, Wright with a W, A-G-E-N, on Facebook. And Jason Wright with a W, A-G-E-N, on Twitter. Join the Fantasy League if you haven't. You have a chance to beat me because I am awful out of the blocks this year. So join the Fantasy League if you haven't had the chance to. All right. So, yeah, we were looking at the Premier League and the current table and just the Palace intrigue over all of it. And, looking at that third group. Well, and David, you mentioned the fear of relegation. Third group right now, you have 9 teams separated by 7 points. You've got Crystal Palace, who finally snapped their losing streak, winning last time out. They've got Leeds this weekend. And Leeds is right behind them at 29 points. Wolves at 28. They've lost 3 of 5. Drew last time out. They've got Chelsea. Interesting for Frank Lampard. 15th, we mentioned West Ham. 15, 16, 17, 18, all at 27 points. Your goal difference, West Ham minus 13, Everton minus 18, Forest minus 28, Bournemouth minus 30. Everton's got Manchester United this weekend. Forest has Villa. Bournemouth has Leicester in one that's very, very interesting at the bottom of the table. And then Leicester's at 25 points, having lost 4 of 5, 1 point in their last 5 matches. And a Southampton, who I think they're done. And then I think that folks will be looking at James Ward-Prowse and Che Adams as the number 1 and the number 2 folks that will be requested from Southampton as they try to have a sell-off. Southampton at 23 points. They get Manchester City. But, David, you mentioned the fear of relegation. Crystal Palace called Roy Hodgson. They're like, hey, can you come back? Hodgson came back at the age of 75. So what happens? You win your first time out. New coach bump. So who knows? But it will be the most, for me, like I said, I spend a lot of my time at the bottom of the table because the top of the table, we know that it's going to be Arsenal. They've got an 8-point lead, but they also have played one more match. So in theory, it's a 5-point lead. I think that there's at least one more match between Manchester City and Arsenal. So Manchester City's in a must-win in that situation. Could cut it to 2. And then how does Arsenal respond? But yeah, for me, intriguing stuff at the bottom because we talked about how life is in the championship and how right now 12 of the 14 teams at the bottom of the table in the championship have spent time in the Premier League and haven't figured out how to respond to being relegated financially. How would these teams respond to being relegated financially? That's the gazillion-dollar question when it comes to these folks. Yeah, I mean, and it to you, Bam. Thanks for coming on, and thanks for hanging out with us as you always do, especially this time of year where you get to hang on a little earlier. Relegation to me is relegation second to the promotion battles. I mean, but the thing is, even this year, Burnley, we know Burnley's gangbusters this year. And when has that been in the same sentence? The word Burnley and the word gangbusters. That's the intriguing part of it. Burnley and gangbusters. They've been amazing under Vincent Kompany. And Pep Guardiola has maintained that there will be a day when Vincent Kompany returns to Manchester City to be the manager there. That would to me, that seems like a decent line of succession that's there. So, we'll see what happens. I would anticipate it happening someday when Pep Guardiola wants to pack it in and move to New York and then become the eventual manager or whatever attached to NYCFC as they play at Dillon Butler Estates in Queens. But that's a couple of years down the line. And I think all of that's a couple of years down the line. But yeah, for me, I mean, this year you would sit there and look at the promotion battles in the lower divisions and go, yeah, that's intriguing. But Burnley has kind of taken the steam out of that one. Badgers. So when do the Spurs rehire Pochettino? As a Spurs fan, you could easily see it happening. Yeah, I could too. What do you do? I mean, you look at Mauricio Pochettino, and there's a comfort level with the coaches. I mean, with the players, comfort level with the front office, comfort level with the fans until they lose once in a week, and then they start to freak out all over again because that's what we do as fans. Everything's great until you lose one in a row, and then the sky is falling. Tom's feeling good about Everton. Sean, now, honestly, Tom, when honestly could you say in a sentence that Sean Dyche has really solidified them? Knowing what we've seen with Burnley and knowing the past there, Sean Dyche has really solidified Everton. Not giving up goals and buckets, but that's the thing. Most of the results will be the 1-0, 1-1 stuff. But that's what he was at Burnley. You weren't gonna set the world on fire offensively. So we'll see. All right. So Ricky Ricardo performing a public service once again, as he does as our resident Twitter chaser during the day. It appears, according to our friends at Deadline Day Live, that Jose Mourinho is being offered the Saudi national team gig. So if you were wanting that to happen, they want to. Okay, so here's how it is. All right, and this is from our friends at Core Sport. And Core Sport, by the way, Corriere dello Sport, reputable. This is top tier. This is Class A. This is your top tier folks. Corriere dello Sport. Saudi Arabia want to offer Jose Mourinho a 2-year contract to become the new head coach of the national team. According to our friends at Transfer News Live and Corriere dello Sport, it would be worth 2 years, 120 million euro, and would make him the highest paid coach of all time. 120 million euro. 120 million euro. Jose Mourinho, Saudi Arabia wants to offer the gig to Jose Mourinho. Would his current employer allow him to take it? Would they let him double dip? Because I know that he's mentioned that he would want to double dip as well. Does he get to do both? Or does he just get to do the one? Roma, choose us or the national team gig. And if you got 120 million euros staring at you for a 2-year deal, I mean, and this isn't, you're so 24-25, you're not even getting to the 26 World Cup yet. You're not even in that discussion. It's 2 years. 2 years, 120 million euro. Obviously, if you're Jose Mourinho and you're being offered the contract of a lifetime, you can say no. It's like, I mean, dude, they're offering me 120 million euro. What am I supposed to say? For a 2-year deal. 2 years. 2. A 2-year deal. We always talk about liking apples. I like them apples. 120 million euro. That's what you're staring at. Possibly, probably, maybe. If you were if you were Jose Mourinho, because that's the thing. If you're Jose Mourinho, because that's part of it. The desire is there to still coach domestically and be a national team coach. Because, I mean, if you think about it, national team coaches, you're in for camps. Then if your employer in your league play trusts you, then perhaps you get to double dip. But 120 million euro, according to Corriere dello Sport, allegedly being offered to Jose Mourinho to take charge of the Saudi Arabia national team. Saudi Arabia national team gig. 2 years, 120. It's an absolute no-brainer. Yeah, if you're offered it, would you take it? Shoot, yeah. Well, like I said, there's been that talk. There's been that discussion. Can I double dip? Can I do both? Can I do both? Yeah, I mean, we all would, Coco. 120 million bucks? Shoot, yeah. Absolutely shoot, yeah. So you got that going on this morning. Possibly, probably, perhaps. For the final half hour, I'm going to post out here once again. All right, so since we're talking a lot about what's going on in international play. Okay, so Tiger, thank you for the update, because I know that we're all going to be watching that today as well. We're going to be watching the tournament in Augusta that I don't know if we can necessarily name without getting into trouble. But yeah, we're looking at Monday finish. I just think we are absolutely looking at a Monday finish here. We really, really are. No, well, look. What if I want to go back? What if I want to go back and cover it? What if somebody taps me on the shoulder and says, hey, you want to go back after 75 years of not covering it? So, tradition unlike any other. And Tiger has parred number one. So we'll keep an eye on that today. I'm an egg salad guy. I could never do pimento cheese. I could never do the pimento cheese sandwich. But apparently they brought back the peach ice cream sandwich, the peach flavored ice cream sandwich. And speaking of which, if you missed the first half hour of the show, we had breaking news from the president and co-owner of South Georgia Tormenta, Darin van Tassell. You're going to have a rivalry now, officially named, trophy and pageantry and pomp and circumstance to be named later. The Peach States Derby like more than one state, considering apparently, according to Darin and the research from our friends at South Georgia Tormenta, the state of South Carolina claims to be more producers of peaches than the state of Georgia, yet the state of Georgia refers to itself as the peach state. So the Peach States Derby, details, pictures, photos, and all of the other pomp, trophies, all that kind of stuff is going to come out in short order with the Peach States Derby. So yeah, South Carolina claims to produce more. Georgia is the Peach State and the Empire State of the South. And so the Peach States Derby, South Georgia Tormenta and Greenville Triumph, starting this weekend, but Greenville has to make it all the way back from Phoenix, where they lost 1-0 in the Open Cup last night. Remember, once again, draw 6:30 tonight. While Richmond and Cleveland SC are playing, and we looked at the 12 teams that are in our particular footprint, we wonder what's going to happen with those 12 teams. Do you go strictly, totally, completely geographic, or do you try and sit there and fiddle things around and you try to create more rivalries and things like that? And that's the big question. How does the Open Cup happen? You know, I know that you guys in the timeline this morning were sitting there and saying, you know, I'm looking forward to playing Tormenta. Tormenta, once again, remember, Darin said that they have put in 2 hosts in the next round. So you could have the next match with a Southern team playing Tormenta in Statesboro, Georgia, in the next round. I know Atlanta is like the spoke in the wheel right now. With Atlanta coming in as an MLS side, you're right in the middle of it. Tormenta, Birmingham, Tampa, Charlotte Independence, Memphis 901, the Miami FC. Yes, Crisp County and Cordele. Yes, the watermelon capital of the U.S. And did I see correctly that Irwinton and Wilkinson County has a banana pudding festival? Did I see that? I think it was like last weekend. I think that's what it was. I think banana pudding in Irwinton. So there's a lot of things that we learn. You know, you get the Great Pig Jig. Oh, I know it does. I know, Coco, it does sound amazing. But the thing is, could you imagine being a taste tester for that? Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, now that you've got me curious. All right. So once again, searching as we do. Yep. Okay. Here's your details. It is in Irwinton. It is absolutely in Irwinton. The State Banana Pudding Festival of Georgia in Wilkinson County. And I'm going to put putting the website address in the Twitch pitch. It literally is bananapuddingfestival.com. Oh my God. Hopefully spelled it correctly. Banana Pudding Festival of Georgia. The State Banana Pudding Festival. It was last Saturday in Irwinton. And according to our friends at Explore Georgia, it just looks absolutely amazing. Sample banana pudding from local nonprofits on our Puddin' Path and vote on your favorite. Complete the pudding path. I see what they say, Puddin' Path, and then they say pudding path. They put the apostrophe in one, and then they don't put it in the other. Complete the pudding path, and you've eaten almost a full pound of banana pudding. Cooks from around the state setting up for the judges mid-morning, so head to the stage to see who walks away with the prize in the bragging rights. Not bragging, but bragging rights to Georgia's best banana pudding. Puddin' Pedal bike ride, a 40 and a 20-mile ride option with banana pudding fueling stops on both routes. Check out the Poppin' and Skippin' Tractor and Car Show going on all day with awards given out at 4 o'clock. And afterwards, don't miss the Tractor and Car Parade. Full day of entertainment with the talent at the Banana Pudding stage. Food vendors, crafters, and a kids' corner make this a must-do festival. You are not kidding. Irwinton, Georgia, for the State Banana Pudding Festival. The Puddin' Pedal, the Puddin' Path, skipping and popping, live music, the individual contest, banana carving, arts and crafts, and a banana peel and play all day. Inflatables painting, lawn checkers. Goodness gracious, this looks absolutely amazing. And the Banana Pudding Festival. That looks absolutely tremendous. So, yeah, the Banana Pudding Festival. It exists, and we would all gain like 9 gazillion pounds when it happened. So, Banana Pudding Festival. We mentioned some gossip, rumor, and innuendo and other kinds of things. Get this. I know this, and like I said, today we kind of talk more international stuff because we're talking MLS tomorrow, all show. And once again, if it's through particular papers, once again, take the information at your own peril. From our friends at The Independent, Chelsea are considering a discussion with Antonio Conte. And from our friends at The Independent, and what would be another sensational development in their managerial search. All right, you've got me intrigued. All right, so from our friends at The Independent, let's see if it behaves in a timely fashion. Antonio Conte, believe it or not, according from our friends at The Independent, to Chelsea, or at least being discussed when it comes with Chelsea. Frank Lampard, obviously a very happy man. Folks are wondering whether or not the folks at Chelsea with the hiring of Frank Lampard, is he really the man to clean up the mess? So Antonio Conte is being considered, apparently, allegedly, probably, perhaps. Shock approach to Conte is being considered. So here's how it is being phrased, by the way. Lampard's in the running. And this is Miguel Delaney. The Stamford Bridge hierarchy are already deep in talks about a shock return for Frank Lampard as the interim. Okay, so that happened. This was published before the Lampard presser. In order to give themselves breathing space to appoint the right long-term manager. The club have been insistent it's going to be a thorough process, illustrated by the fact that Boli and Egbali are at least curious to see what the Italian can bring as the last manager to win the title at Chelsea. They see him as a winner who can potentially bring structure to a huge squad. Such a move.
None of that matters.
Something happens in your ears like that. That is just loud and a half. Sorry about the jump. Such a move would not be a reflection on any of the candidates so far, especially as Luis Enrique is said to have greatly impressed, particularly with how he outlined his tactical vision for a 4-3-3, but merely show they want to take their time, give this appointment all due consideration. Remember, there was a legal battle, employment tribunal, and a £9 million payout to Conte, but apparently that would prove no obstacle in bringing Antonio Conte back. So Antonio Conte. Exactly. So according to Ravello, they also called Jose too, and Badger. Yes, to your point. And yeah, the only good journalist from The Independent doesn't write for them anymore. He's writing a book. Okay, so I know that we've hit moratoriums on discussing Ted Lasso. Episode 4 is out. So can we talk as far as episode 3? Since episode 4 is out, can we handle that moratorium? I'm looking forward to seeing what Trent Crimm's book is on either the Lasso Way or Richmond or what have you. I'm looking forward to it. So, yes, writing a book on AFC Richmond, absolutely true. And Badger, to your point, to your absolute point, does he even want to manage anymore? Right. And I think that is the larger point in all of this. The larger point in all of this is, does Antonio Conte, after what he's been through with his own surgery and with his friends all passing away, does he seem to be, frankly, all that interested in coaching anymore? Absolutely, seriously, would there be an interest? And yeah, and thanks once again, Ricky, from our friends at Relevo. Chelsea contacted Jose Mourinho, third time. 3. How many championships? 3. 3. Mm-hmm. Oh. PSG very pessimistic about Neymar. Aren't we all? Other things going on. All right, and I know we've got to get into this. I mean, once again, stupidity down here. Stupidity down here and dealing with Romelu Lukaku. So Lukaku gets sent off. His agents have condemned, quote, beyond despicable, end quote, racist abuse from Juve fans that led to the Inter Milan striker being sent off in the first leg of the Coppa Italia semi. And by the way, Real Madrid destroying Barca in their semi. Whew. Lukaku shown a second yellow after celebrating a late equalizer from the penalty spot, with the Belgian putting a finger to his lips in front of home supporters in Turin. So that got to happen too. So once again, you have folks who are not pleased, and Romelu Lukaku gets a second yellow, gets sent off, and then his agents come to the fore, and it's like, well, okay, great, thanks for that. So stoppage time goal leveled the tie at 1 of the second leg, sparked a heated final 5 minutes. Handanovic and Cuadrado also got sent off late. Rock Nation, who represents Lukaku, alleged the 29-year-old had been subjected to racist chanting before, during, and after taking his penalty, and accused officials of punishing the victim of abuse. Michael Yormark, president of Rock Nation, said in a statement, tonight's racist remarks made toward Lukaku by Juve fans in Turin were beyond despicable, cannot be accepted. Romelu scored a penalty in the game before, during, and after the penalty, subjected to hostile and disgusting racist abuse. Romelu celebrated in the same manner he has previously celebrated goals. The ref's response was to award a yellow card to Romelu Lukaku, deserves an apology from Juve, and Yormark expects the league to condemn the behavior of this group of Juve supporters immediately. The Italian authorities must use this opportunity to tackle racism rather than punish the victim of the abuse. I'm certain that the footballing world shares the same sentiment, end quote. And so, yeah, ugly scenes at the end. Massa sent Lukaku off with their fracas after full time. Scuffle between Cuadrado and Handanovic. Massa sent both off. Return leg held in Milan on the 26th of April. Lukaku has been the target of alleged racist abuse during his first spell with Inter between 19 and 21. He said that football was going backwards in terms of combating racism back in September of 2019, after accusing Cagliari fans of racist chanting, while Serie A opened an investigation into allegations of racist abuse aimed at Lukaku after a game against Napoli earlier this year. So the more things change, the more things stay the same, I guess, is probably sadly the way to describe that this morning. So we've had our own round of silliness down here. But yeah, I legitimately, Badger, do not see Conte coaching next year. I really don't. He might take some time off. I mean like substantial time off, his own surgery, losing friends, all of that stuff. All of it. I mean, hell, if I was that age, which I am, and going through the same things that he's going through, And I would be taking serious pause and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the next stage of my life. Leicester's considering Martin O'Neill and Rafa Benitez as they're chasing after an experienced manager. You've got, and once again, let me know if you've heard this one before. Inter Miami to offer Lionel Messi an equity stake. Once again, that's from Miguel Delaney. But PSG star eyes a different prize. Inter Miami are willing to offer Messi an equity stake in the club to convince him to join this summer, although the player's preference is to stay in Europe with the Copa 2024 until the Copa 2024 in order to try and win Champions League one last time. Question is whether that's still at PSG or another suitable offer that presents itself. Since Barcelona have said that they want to once again present an offer to him, I have no earthly idea how they would afford to pay him. According to Delaney and everybody at The Independent, Spanish league leaders have not yet even contacted him about a proposal, let alone made a concrete offer. So for Inter Miami Beckham FC, it's an equity stake. Once again, not surprised that something like that would, because that's the kind of stratosphere that you're dealing with here. That's what you're staring at. It's going to be that much money that you're discussing here. An equity stake. And it's going to be like, well, we can offer you like $17. Nope, that's not enough. Got to be more than that. Got to be more. Steve Cooper is apparently he's there. I mean, they sign him. Marinakis, the owner, signs him to a massive contract extension while they're undergoing problems in the relegation zone. And I think that they have now gotten past the point of more points than transfers this season. I think they're past that. I think that they have finally 27. So they are officially have more points this year than they do transfers. I think it's like by 2 or 3 though. And you're 27 points and you sign him to an extension. The owner has said, we're good. We're keeping him. Everything's cool. Everything's fine. But is it? When do you run out of patience with Steve Cooper? Considering that you've invested everything that you've invested in players, can you afford to invest it into somebody else? It's a big question. Alexander Sefrin, since we seem to be doing a lot of since we're doing a lot of Prem and Proper here this morning, Alexander Sefrin defends the Premier League despite the imbalance concerns. Jamie Gardner's article. He has leapt. UEFA President Alexander Sefrin has leapt to the defense of the Premier League amid concerns its success is creating an imbalance in European football. So there's that's going on. The gap between, and once again, this is the article. The gap between the English top flight and Europe's other big leagues in terms of broadcasting revenue and transfer spending has been highlighted as a problem by a number of observers of the sport at continental level, including La Liga president, UEFA executive committee member Javier Tebas, and Super League promoters A22. But at UEFA Congress, Sefrin said the Premier League should be applauded and not attacked for its success. Sefrin said, quote, "We must never forget that jealousy has never been a good counselor." I have to remember that. Jealousy has never been a good counselor. A few months ago, UEFA and its club competitions were being blamed for all the evils in football and the inequalities within the leagues. Today, it's the Premier League that seems to be under attack. Since the British government, supporters, and clubs said no to the Super League, the Premier League has been demonized and labeled a Super League in its own right that needs to be toppled. However, the Premier League's success was not achieved by accident. And this is true. By adopting an audacious approach based on a vision, a strategy, and a lot of hard work, its leaders and clubs developed a remarkable model founded on sporting merit and a highly egalitarian distribution of wealth. Well, it's not all that egalitarian. It's top-heavy. It's merit-based, but okay. One of the most egalitarian systems in the world. Rather than a model to be destroyed, it's a model that should be followed. He also highlighted the stats, which showed that despite the English League's financial dominance, its clubs had by no means dominated at a continental level. And that's true. Quote, let me reassure, once again, Sefrin, those who fear that English football will crush everything that stands in its way, the figures do not lie. In the last 20 years, the Champions League has been won on 5 occasions by English clubs. Only twice in the last decade, an English club has lifted the iconic trophy with the big ears. Pointed out that Italy has the most quarterfinalists in this season's Champions League and Europa League. Belgium have the most representatives in Europa Conference League. 17 countries, 17 domestic leagues from everywhere in Europe played the round of 16 of UEFA club competitions. Football is still for everyone. But it is true that jealousy sees everything except the truth. Sefrin reelected unopposed for a second 4-year term in Lisbon earlier this week. So Alexander Sefrin coming to the defense of the Premier League. Not really a surprise, mind you, but nevertheless, still coming to the defense of the Premier League when it comes to everything in football. Also, gossip, rumor, and innuendo, things left unsaid. We've got viewing habits today. We got stuff to watch, and we've got all the other rumors. By the way, Tottenham have no plans to sell Harry Kane this summer. They have no plans to. Everybody's got a plan, or until they get punched in the mouth. I think Spurs have been punched in the mouth. What's their plan? Now, the programming note on the third round draw of the Open Cup. Remember, we had Darin van Tassell at the beginning of the show. Programming note, the third round draw, 6:30 live on the BR app and BR Football YouTube channel. We had a big upset in South American football yesterday. Will it happen again today? Copa Libertadores doubleheader on BN and BN and Espanol on the simulcast. Liverpool and Corinthians at 6. Monagas Boca Juniors at 8. Apple TV and Season Pass. The U15s of the Generation Adidas Cup. Starting the second half, they're in the second half. Red Bulls and Austin FC. Philadelphia Union and Real Madrid are at noon. U17s are at 2:30 and 5. It is Crew and NYCFC, Flamengo and LAFC. Open Cup is on BR. Kickers in Cleveland SC at 7 o'clock. And the Youth Cup semis are on the Plus, West Ham and Southampton. So that's your viewing schedule for today. Once again, biggest thing, 6:30 is the draw for Open Cup on BR and their platforms. So an eye on that as we go forward. Now, gossip, rumor, and innuendo involving players, especially with the update from Frank Lampard. Bayer Leverkusen manager Xabi Alonso has emerged as a contender for the Chelsea job. Leicester set to demand about £50 million for James Maddison, with Spurs favored to sign him. Spurs are also interested in Atletico Madrid's Rodrigo in the midfield. With Yuri Tielemans, who's attracted interest from Newcastle and Barcelona. Arsenal view Roberto De Zerbi as a replacement for Mikel Arteta if Arteta leaves for Real Madrid. Chelsea have started negotiations with N'Golo Kante over a new deal. That's from our friend Fabrizio Romano. We mentioned Leicester considering Martin O'Neill or Rafa Benitez, an experienced caretaker manager to get them through the end of the year. Leicester have identified Graham Potter, who turned them down, and Thomas Frank as summer targets, with ex-Southampton boss Ralph Hasenhüttl and Jesse Marsch also under consideration. 4-letter paper, so take the information at your own peril. Borussia Mönchengladbach manager Adi Hütter could also be an option for Leicester. Leicester are favorites to sign Valencia's keeper Georgi Memardashvili. Once again, that's from Fabrizio Romano. Burnley want to sign Ajax's 20-year-old Dutch winger Sontje Hansen this summer, and Arsenal are in negotiations with the reps of Reece Nelson about a contract extension. So that's your gossip, rumor, and innuendo this morning with players and managers and things like that. We've been all over the place this morning talking about pudding festivals, banana pudding festivals. See, banana pudding, that's just, See, we got into the banana pudding festival and completely and totally got sidetracked, or at least I did anyway. So you've got all that. Now, also on the board this morning before we go. There were a couple of other things, just some quick other items. I'm trying to see what was the stories that I had that. So of course you circle something, and then of course you're like, okay, Karim Benzema sealed the final spot for Real Madrid, aggregate of 4-1, beating Barcelona by the score of 4-0. Williamson and Rafael are ready for the finalissima, the clash of England and Brazil. And there were a couple of other things involving crackdowns. From Ed Aarons at The Guardian, Premier League has stepped up its attempts to crack down on tragedy chanting after a marked increase in incidents. The Guardian is coming out with this story. A Premier League working group set up this year to tackle the problem, also involving clubs, the FA, the EFL, and the Football Supporters Association, understood to have consulted the police and the Crown Prosecution Service in recent weeks to discuss what legislation could be used to pursue convictions against alleged perpetrators. MP for Liverpool West Derby long campaigned on the subject, believed to have been a part of the discussions along with a number of supporters groups. Back on Tuesday, the Premier League condemned Hillsborough chants heard at Stamford Bridge at the match between Chelsea and Liverpool. That's classy. And said it was seeking to address the problem as a priority. Despite insiders' fears the issue is getting worse and worse, it's understood existing legislation makes it difficult for police to prosecute because the chants are not considered discriminatory. The working group is also believed to have consulted lawyers to find a solution. Chants mocking Hillsborough were also heard at the Etihad on Saturday after Manchester City's win over Liverpool. No means the only tragedy referenced. In February, Leeds fans sang about the 1958 Munich air disaster, in which 8 Manchester United players were among the 23 who died. Traveling fans responded with songs referencing events in Istanbul and also chants about Valley Parade. So you're all classy all the way around. Good Lord. Also on the, I'm trying to think. Also on the board this morning, I think, was that the other story? I think it might have been. Okay, so there was that one. Yeah, we talked about the ref getting the 12-match ban. And Ricky, to your point, and people just being rude for sport is wild. I mean, yeah, and we'll wrap up with this. And once again, thanks to everybody for hanging out with us today. We'll be back at it again with the sprint that is the Friday show tomorrow from Tifton, Georgia. And that'll be a good Friday. And I will leave you with watching the tournament in Augusta for the remainder of the day. The notion that, you think it's a cool idea to sit there and slam other folks for tragedies in their lives, that's just flat out classy. And I'm saying that in the most sarcastic tone possible. I don't know what triggers folks to sit there and say, I think I'll chant about somebody dying. Rich, I don't know. I mean, we talked a lot of Open Cup, and we talked a lot of Premier League. We talked about the craziness of the Open Cup and the romance of the Open Cup, and never underestimate the magic of the Open Cup. We spent a lot of time on the Open Cup this morning and how crazy it was. Brackets are at 6:30 tonight for round 3. But the biggest thing, like we're wrapping up today, just being rude for sport. Don't do it. And I know that we all have pretty good heads on our shoulders here. Those of us that, those of you that watch and those of you that listen and those of you that are part of the show on a daily basis. If you're in an environment where someone thinks that this is a good idea, counsel them on how it's not. Think about if the situation were reversed. Have them pursue it from that way. How would they perceive it if the situation were reversed? Yeah. Atlas fans, death threats to Daniel Gazdag. So, real classy stuff. And thanks for that reminder, Rich. I think that, we do have to be reminded of things like this, sadly. But I think that what it also does is it reminds us to be good stewards of the game. We want what's best for the game. We want what's best because of how it can impact folks across the board. Down to that person who's watching a match for the first time, that person that you bring to the match for the first time, who may not have understood your environment until you showed it to them. When you see it's passion. Exactly. Yeah, it's passionate to sit there and cheer and jeer about folks and their tragedies. Absolutely. Yes. Passion. Absolutely. Please hold one thing. When you have all of these things, let's all be reminded to be good stewards. Let's be good stewards. And then we can go from there and have the game be what the game should be. It was. It absolutely was. It absolutely was. You are not wrong, Rich. So we end with a little levity as well today. Yeah, it was housekeeping. And having to remind them that I had a late checkout. So let's just be good stewards. Let's not be what we have to talk about. But I think that we have to talk about it to remind everyone else about what can and can't be, what should and should be, and how we can be better. All this tragedy cheering, now that it's popped back up in the news because it's happened like 3 times in a week. And Rich, you saw what was going on with Gazdag. Let's be at the front of being better. I know we are, but it's a reminder that there are times where we need to be. So let's continue to be the good stewards of the game that we are. And we'll work forward and we'll enjoy it and we'll spread our love and the great stories that are attached to it all over the place. And we'll do it again tomorrow. And I'll figure out how I can clean things up in a short period of time and edit a show and try to be out of the hotel at a certain time. So we'll be from Tifton tomorrow as we are gradually winding our way to the in-laws for Easter weekend. Tomorrow's Good Friday. May your Thursday be equally good. And we'll be back at it again on Friday. Once again, it's the Friday Sprint. News from 9 o'clock to 9:30, 9:05 to 9:30. Beyond Goals at 9:30, unless they're off doing Eastery things. And then 10 o'clock, the weekend whip around, patent pending, trademark coming, probably, hopefully, maybe. And sooner rather than later. And then hopefully we'll get to catch up with Jason and find out about NYCFC because he's had conversations with Glenn Crooks, friend of the show, and find out what's going on with NYC, with Atlanta United as they get ready for their match this weekend. So it's the Friday Sprint, and we'll be back at it again tomorrow. Thanks to Darin van Tassell and everybody at South Georgia Tormenta for being great hosts yesterday for Open Cup. Thank you, Badger, and you as well. And we'll be back at it again tomorrow. Same stuff. 9:05. We'll call it a date. We'll talk about the sport and everything else and all the news here on Soccer's Morning Show. So, mucha platial. Since it is the end of the show, that means that I get to do this. We'll be back at it again 9:05 in the morning, talking about everything. And I mean everything, because there's a lot to talk about. But it is the Friday Sprint. Be safe, mucha platial, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow.